Okay, welcome back. What we're going to be doing is going through with this leaf example and kind of more exploring the properties of adjusting color in Photoshop, namely the hue, the saturation, and the lightness. The lightness is also called the luminance or value. This is a really good way to learn how color behaves in general. So right now you see we got this adjustments layer, and I'm going to bring up my layers here, and this is an adjustment layer. It's actually brought on by, you go to layer and you go to new adjustment layer, and you can adjust everything in through here. The hue saturation comes from the color one. You can adjust color, vibrance, hue saturation, color balance, black and white, photo filter, channel mixer. These guys up here, of course, are brightness, contrast. This is the contrast and the fix, the black levels of your photo. And down here you've got the kind of the special effects. You got the invert, which flops all the colors. So say you've got a green, it'll flop it to opposite on the color wheel. Posterize, choose a couple different colors and it'll stick to it. Threshold, gradient map, selective color, etc., etc. But right now we're going to be talking about the hue saturation. So back to this guy. The hue, again, is just another word for color. So when I take the slider and I slide it up and down, what I'm doing is I'm changing the color of the object that we have selected here, which are the leaves, these nice maple leaves. And notice at each end of the hue you've got red. You got red at the bottom end, I'm going to say the left hand side, the negative side, and then on the positive side you also have red, more of a purpley color. Now right now they actually change both to blue. That's because what we're doing is we are changing the entire hue of all of the colors inside of this actual document, which is green. So we're shifting the color according to the greens, the reds, the yellows, the blues. So say if I stick it to red right now, it's not going to go red because it's red plus green. So if we want to colorize it, for example, and I'm just going to click on this little guy down here, the colorize option. This will give me a better example to show you guys. If I click on this guy, now it goes to red. Why? Because we're applying that red color, we're coloring, we're discarding the green information, and we're going to colorize the whole thing red. Now when I actually slide this through, you'll see it changes from, red to red orange to yellow to green blue to blue to purple to magenta and back to red. So on each of the sides of these guys, as far as the hue goes, it's kind of like a big circle. So on the positive side you've got red, on the negative side you have red, and you got all the other colors in between. So I'm going to keep this red, for example. Now the saturation, again, how I called about the saturation was that 100% saturation is just basically increasing the intensity of that red color to its maximum that you can see, or that can be transmitted. So right now it's at 100%. If I bring it down to 50%, you'll see it's half. It's half of the saturation, half of the intensity. I bring it down to 0. Well, there is no saturation, no intensity. It is black and white. So by removing the saturation of the hue, you turn something into a black and white image. Now the next guy down on the list is lightness, and that is of course the value. The value is basically how bright the image gets. It ranges from negative 100, which is absolute black, to absolute white, and now everything in between is the value. So as I slide the slider up and down, you'll see this leaf turns color, and there is a kind of a break-even point here where even the background starts to go black. If I wanted to change that, I would actually have to make a selection around these guys and modify it that way. And notice actually all of these are interconnected. So if I bring the lightness down and bring the saturation up, I'm making a nice rich dark color. I'm going to bring the saturation up, the lightness up a bit more, and you'll see, and then I can play with the saturation to make a richer red. Bring the lightness up a bit, now it becomes more of a pink. So all of these guys are interconnected, and all these guys play with one another, and they usually play quite happily with one another. So then I'm going to increase the saturation again, bring the lightness down. Usually you want to leave the lightness actually roughly where it is if you want to keep your image kind of more correct. So then we have a nice red maple leaf. I can make it a nice green maple leaf if I want. I prefer red just because it looks way cooler. And I'm going to bring the saturation down a little bit because I want it to pick up on some of the black underneath on the lightness. And that's nice, a nice rich cherry red color. That's pretty close to what I want. So there you go. There's a real brief rundown of the hue, which is the color, the saturation, which is the intensity, and the lightness, which is also called the value or the luminance, depending on what profession you're from. Luminance usually refers to, the guys in the photography business talk a lot about luminance. That's just the lightness or the value, etc., etc. So there you go. Thanks, guys, and I'll talk to you later.